Good morning, everybody. It's Garden of Eden here, and welcome to another video game discussion. This time of Mardek Chapters 1, 2, and 3. This is a game that was originally on Newgrounds all the way back in 2007. Eventually got ported to Congregate as being the main site to play it, and then, of course, the Adobe crash happened, Flash game, Pandemonium, a number of games were lost to time. Some games were able to be salvaged by certain players, but like the damage had been done. This game ultimately got re-released on Steam about 5 years ago, and so I was able to re-experience it. This is a game I have a lengthy history with, but unfortunately not all of that history is positive, so we're just going to give you a little bit of background information. The year's 2007. You know, the PlayStation 3 is already out. It was released in 2006. You have all these other, at that time, next-gen consoles. But, like, the big thing at that particular point in time, and one of Newgrounds' claim to fame, are Flash games. You have, like, these next-generation consoles at that time out. But Flash games are huge. They have a ridiculous following on Newgrounds. And among those games, RPGs are one of the big boons. Like there was Artivision, there was Max Mysteria, there was like the Stickman RPG. You had all of these different games, and then along comes Mardek, a relatively unassuming Flash game when it first came out, because it was released as a Chapter 1, and Chapter 1 was a pretty, I would say, very plain and ordinary, not very special release that came out at that particular time. It was very short. It featured only 2 playable characters total. It had like one main area, a forest. You could go to the sewers and do one side quest, but that was it. You didn't really get a big feel for what the game was going to be like yet at that particular point in time, because it was just kids having an imaginary adventure and just beating up a bully and all this other stuff. It just wasn't anything that really told you how good it was going to be at that particular point in time. And then Chapter 2 released, and it was mind-blowing. It had so many side quests, 5 total characters, multiple locations, multiple places you could grind, multiple abilities to learn, just multiple things you could do. And the thing about Mardek that was very interesting and refreshing at that point in time is it lampooned a lot of RPG tropes that existed at the time. Like, granted, it was RPG tropes through the lens of somebody in the year 2007. I imagine that'd be very different if we were trying to look at that now in the year 2023 and identifying what tropes are what anymore. But it was lampooning that kind of viewpoint, but it was also almost like a lampooning of that lampooning, because they would at times take certain tropes and flip them on their head and do different things with them, but everybody had like this very quirky personality through the lens of somebody that is very hyper aware of tropes and is trying to incorporate as much of them as humanly possible while trying to make a distinct game out of it. And so chapter 1 I didn't really care about. Chapter 2 I did, because I could finally see where they were going, and it was exponentially better than anything that Chapter 1 could have been. But there was a problem. When I played this game originally, and I saw what Chapter 2 had to offer, I went back to Chapter 1 and I like meticulously level grinded in the forest. I learned pretty quickly that there's an EXP system where certain enemies have base EXP they can give, but it is warped depending on what your level is, meaning the higher level you are, the less of that base EXP yield it can give you. But I learned pretty quickly that if you hit yourself, you would always get 100 EXP per that attack. And if you healed yourself, you would get 100 EXP for healing yourself. And so I learned that even if I can attack these enemies and get like what, at towards the end, like 20 something EXP just for killing an enemy, or I could just beat myself up and level up extremely quick and heal using the abilities I had. And so I used that, and across many, 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 many hours, I'm not even comfortable telling you the number, I managed to get like all the way up to like 40 plus in Chapter 1, which is insane. You're not supposed to leave there. I mean, you're supposed to be like level 3, so I'd like watch YouTube videos while just mindlessly Mardecking in the background. And I was just like extremely, extremely prepared for Chapter 2, and so I did that when I played Newgrounds. And so we were all anxiously awaiting Chapter 3. But what ended up happening is somebody that worked with Pseudo Lone Wolf, the creator Tobias Conewall here, stole the game and attempted to upload it to Newgrounds, and it got uploaded. But something about the way it was uploaded made it not work. So everybody who clicked on it, and there were a lot of people who clicked on it, because like this is like one of the biggest Flash games I think anyone had ever tried to get into, it didn't open. Even Pseudolone Wolf had commented about like how this could hurt the future of the series, and just like, wow, this certainly wasn't expected. Just all of this dialogue about it, and I think that hurt the relationship with posting on Newgrounds, and ultimately the game got moved from Newgrounds to Congregate. The problem was when it was moved from Newgrounds to Congregate, I had to restart everything from scratch. I had to level up everybody again. I had to learn skills all over again. I had to do all the side quests all over again. I had to do everything from scratch. And my brain was like, I got to like the 40s the first time. I've got to do that again. And I did. And so I did all of that again in another inordinate amount of times. And then I went to go from 1 to 2 to 3, because at this point, I was delayed. I'd lost everything, and the way that I played those games meant that I was late to starting 3, and by the time I did, I was able to go to the first dungeon of Chapter 3, try to grind to get like some of the 1% drops, because they were 1% back then for some of these items, and at some point, the data that was saved on my computer, because the way that it works is that Adobe Flash saves are saved on your computer, it somehow got corrupted or lost, or some signal kind of happened to where it got overwritten. I don't know, but all my data was gone. And when I went to load Chapter 3 again, everything was gone. All of the skills that I spent all the time in Chapter 2 grinding, all the items that were Chapter 2 exclusive that I brought over to 3, to learn skills from for future characters, everything was gone. And at that particular point, I'm like, I've already played through the entire series twice. I am burned out. I know if I play through it again, I'm going to be like, it has to be bigger and better than the last time I played it. I got to get all those levels back. I got to get to like level 50 at the start. And I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't. So I let it sit. I let it sit. And like life moved on. I played other games. I continued to go through college. And then went to law school and everything else thereafter. And then Adobe Flash died, and several games could be saved and several games couldn't. But like I'm like, well, there's my one and only chance to play Mardek, except not really, because it was ported to Steam, which takes us to the present time. So I finally replayed it, meticulously had all my level grinding, learned all the abilities, did everything I needed to do with 1 and 2, and finally got to sit down and play 3. And so now I can give my retrospective, my full review, now that I've had the opportunity to play it. And this is without a doubt the game of the year for me. Thank God. This is like the third time I played it, so thank God that's my opinion. 87 out of 100 game. It's got one of those thought-provoking endings that I won't spoil, that kind of recontextualizes the entire journey that you've taken and everything you thought you knew about the journey thus far. And you kind of reflect on it, and you're like, it just makes a creepy kind of sense now that you just come out and say it. It was such a smart ending to Chapter 3 that along with the gameplay and all of the features, that I enjoyed it like so thoroughly. I know I gave Super Mario RPG Remake a 92 out of 100, but I played Super Mario RPG after like almost 2 decades in 2022. So like giving it Game of the Year 2 years in a row, it doesn't really work that way, because I basically am giving it the award twice. This is the game outside of Super Mario RPG that has earned the highest amount of all the other games I played. Death Bolt is at 84. It was the next highest, and Fuga 2 Melodies of Steel was at 83. So they all did a fantastic job. But let's talk about what makes Mardek Chapter 3 so special. So we're going to go ahead and pull open my lovely little save here. And so as you can see, we've got our lovely characters here. We've got Mardek, Zack, Sharla, and Legion. I'm not going to explain their backstories. Again, I don't want to get too deep into like that particular level, but I do want to explain what this RPG does and what makes it different. As you can see, we've got our level and EXP growth. To get to level 61 to level 62, like I mentioned, it goes up by thousands each level up. So 61,000 to go from level 61 to level 62, 46,000, 46 to 47, and so on and so forth. It also has a very interesting skill system. Like I said before, you learn skills from going in and equipping weapons, equipping abilities, and extracting those skills manually from them. It's like Final Fantasy IX, if you've ever played Final Fantasy IX, where you equip that and you get certain points towards it for each time, except when you use to get these mastered, you have to use the abilities a certain number of times. To get these mastered, you have to attack a certain number of times. For defense, you have to defend a certain number of times. Magic attack, use magic attacks a certain number of times. Magic defense, use these a certain number of times. And then ultimately the passives, you just have to win battles a certain number of times. So like if it has 50 AP to master, you have to fight and win 50 battles to master it. And ultimately there are tons and tons of weapons, armor, shields, helmets, accessories, and different things to learn skills from, to where you could make an extremely competent custom party. And you basically have things that trigger at low HP. You have status, or excuse me, elemental resistances. You have status resistances where you can get immunity to certain things by equipping AP. But you can see here in the bottom corner, this is your pool of points. And so like in theory, if I were to equip the strength +1 passive, it would go from 3 to 1 because I consume 2 of those points. And you could spend them however you want, but they're skill area dependent, meaning there's 33 here, 33 here, and so on and so forth. In this particular case, Mardek does not have a lot of magic attack extractables, so he's only able to get magic damage plus 10% and damage plus 20%. Not that he has any actual magic attacks. Maybe in future chapters he would have had. But the game, for a Flash RPG, goes above and beyond. You have a blue mage system. You have a blue mage character who learns abilities from other enemies that he fights. You have an assassin that can learn an ability that a hired mercenary that can deal damage based off of the number of enemies he single-handedly killed. You have a mage character that deals in elemental air damage. You have one that deals with fire. You have a jack of all trades mage. You have a songstress. You have a person that attacks using different inventions that they've made. It's a very, very comprehensive and deep system, and the game is it's just so funny. It's full of so many RPG tropes, like I said, through the lens of somebody in 2007 versus somebody in 2023. A lot of sex jokes. I really wish they'd have toned that down. That's really like the biggest weakness. But this game, we went from a game with like 2 characters to a game with 5 to a game with like 11 playable characters. It is nuts. But therein lies one of the biggest weaknesses that the game honestly has, is that for each and every character, you have to give them all of these abilities all over again. So you have to give them the accessory to make them immune to poison, sleep, all of that, and then fight like what, 20 battles here, 20 battles here, 20 battles here, 20 battles here for every character you get. And it's exhausting. It's a system that kind of collapses on itself because it's very fun to get your characters like battle ready by learning these abilities, but it is exhausting for every new character you get to have to do that. And I think a lot of people, whenever they were playing this game or trying to get involved in it, probably neglected some of the newer characters just because like I can't spend 20 million years doing this for every single character. I can, like, just because I'm crazy, but I think a lot of people probably couldn't. But it has, it has a very good soundtrack. Some of it pays homage to like different Final Fantasy tracks, and you can even get like a Keyblade drop for Kingdom Hearts. You can do a lot. Just a lot of references and a lot of fun things that are sprinkled throughout this game. Fun random encounter systems. There's secret bosses, there's secret dungeons, there are different places you can go, there's different collectibles, you have medals that are like Steam achievements almost, even before like Steam achievements were even a thing. It's just a fun game, and like I said, it has and I won't spoil it, but the ending is so good because you're led to believe through tropes, through everything else, through the way that the villain in Chapter 2 was portrayed, that the journey that you were on and the quest that you were on was a certain way, and you were a certain force in that narrative. And then Chapter 3 flipped it so well, it just so on its head, and just smacked you upside the head with the truth. And like it's like I'm still thinking about it. Like I played the game last night, I'm still thinking about it this morning because it's just so incredibly sad and morbid to kind of think about, because I'm sure if I look back at the previous two chapters, all the hints were there, and I probably should have realized it, but it was kind of drowned out in all the noise of Chapter 2 and all the noise the villain made in Chapter 2 about the actual truth of the quest you're on and what's happening and how you play in that narrative. So overall, Mardek, the entire journey from start to finish, is a 87 must play. It is the epitome, like the absolute peak of Flash RPGs, now ported to a Steam format that anybody can play with more streamlined and better data saving to where it's very unlikely you're ever going to lose it again. The same way that if you were playing it on Flash. The one thing I will say is that it's a shame this is it. This was originally supposed to be a 7-chapter game. And two was exponentially better than 1, and 3 was crazy and exponentially more expansive than 2 was. And so it's a bit nutty to think of like what Chapter 4 would have been like and beyond, because I can't comprehend it. There's so many characters, so many skills, just so much to do, and it's a shame that all of that was put at a close in 2010. There were discussions about possibly like a soft reboot that the Tobias Cornwall had been talking about, but it didn't end up happening. What it did end up happening was this game did get ported to Steam 5 years ago. But it's sad because it's like a game I genuinely wanted more from, and I'll never get that. I'll never get that closure. I'll never know where this game would have gone, how it would have, what references or things or tropes would have continued to be developed, what lens it would have been like in 2013, 2016, or however long this game may have ended up going, because Tobias is still active and making games, still giving development updates for other projects, but Mardek, as far as I know, is done, and we won't ever be getting any other news for that. But regardless, I'm glad I finally had the chance to finish this one. It is wonderful. It is great, and if you haven't played it. I think it's $9.99 on Steam. For a 3-chapter RPG with an ending that kind of makes you think, it's worth it. There's a lot of games with like mind-numbing cutscenes. I don't think this is a game that has it. You just have to keep in mind that some of these are so lampooned that it can get a little bit obnoxious with some of its dialogue, because it's like so purposefully trying to be that annoying lampooning voice that sometimes the dialogue can be a little too heavy in that regard, but it's so good. It's so good. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will be putting up my thoughts for Breath of the Wild, not Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, fairly soon. I apologize to fans of that game, because it's not going to be a pleasant review. I'm kind of reluctant if I even want to post my thoughts on this one because I think this one's going to be a wildly unpopular video, but you'll be seeing those thoughts soon too. Anyway, wow, this is a 20-minute video. That's enough talking about this. Again, this saga that began in 2007, that has spanned over 15 years, is finally put to rest. Thank you and take care.